Hi guys, this is going to be a really hard one to tackle. I'm going to do my best. Just keep in mind that I'm not a psychologist. What I'm speaking from is from my personal experience, my personal opinion, and from the research that I've studied, and also from speaking with other survivors and coaching clients. So here's this topic. The topic is, are they how can you tell the difference? And are they a sex addict, a sex and porn addict, just a sex and porn addict, or are they a narcissist and an addict, and a sex and porn addict? And maybe some differences and some similarities. So just to qualify, I'm in recovery from alcohol addiction, from substance use disorder for 12 years now. And so I sort of understand both sides of the coin in terms of being in your addiction. When I was in my addiction, I was a liar, I was a cheater, I was pretty pathological, I could not take responsibility for my actions, I had incredible self-loathing, I engaged in very self-destructive behaviors. All of these things were true for me when I was in my addiction, right? So in fact, addicts in general can be, they can appear to be very narcissistic because they're very self-centered. That's part of the nature of addiction, right? So it can be very difficult to differentiate whether somebody is a narcissist, an addict, or both, right? So in general, some of the differences that you might see. So sex and porn addicts, like they do the same thing as narcissists that are also sex and porn addicts. Here's some of the things they do. They're typically addicted to porn. They have a lot of online affairs. It could be, with internet dating. It could be Ashley Madison dating sites. It could be, webcams, sex rooms, chat rooms, all that stuff. I don't know all the details of it because I don't have that particular addiction, but I do, I have talked to friends. I have a lot of friends that are in recovery for sex and porn addiction, right? So I do know a little bit about it, and from what I've researched, it's not uncommon for them to go to massage parlors and get sex. They can hire prostitutes. Sometimes they'll be in what appears to be monogamous, committed marriages, and then they're hooking up on gay hookup sites with same-sex partners, and you think that they appear to be heterosexual. That can occur with both sex porn addicts that have gone down that road that are not narcissists, and then also with narcissists that have the comorbidity of sex and porn addiction. So those behaviors can be totally in both of the disorders, right? So, and I kind of think of it like this. It's sort of like alcoholism, in that some alcoholics will drink wine their whole life and they'll die at 85 and they're still alcoholics because they drank alcoholically. It negatively affected their relationships. They couldn't stop when they tried. All those reasons. They were powerless over alcohol, right? And they can just be, just addicted to wine. Other addicts can drink wine, they can drink vodka, they can smoke weed, they can start doing coke, they can start doing heroin, they start gobbling up any drug they can get, and their behaviors escalate and escalate and escalate, and they can start off as a wine drinker and then turn into a heroin addict. And again, you can see both of those types of addictive behaviors in the rooms of 12-step recovery. And I've seen people recover from all types of addictions. I've seen them recover from sex addiction, porn addiction, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, gambling addiction, shopping addiction, all of that, right? And in a way, narcissism is an addiction of its own right. A lot of people sort of refer to it as an addiction. You're addicted to feeling special. You're addicted to perfectionism. You're addicted to supply or fuel or outside validation or the appearance of perfection, right? And so, and part of your upholding that addiction is to put on a mask of perfection. So the whole world thinks that you're perfect, right? You're addicted to feeling special. You have to feel special. And so that's why with narcissists, when they're in the idealization phase, the first phases of the relationship, they're on cloud 9 because they're really getting that, addiction fed, that people think they're so special, right? And so that's why they also need to cheat a lot, because they need that newness of feeling special, right? And when you've been in a relationship with somebody for a long time, like if you're a covert narcissist, that person may still think you're totally special. They may totally love you, but, the law of diminishing returns shows that even if that person is giving you a lot of external validation and still loving you, like, it's not going to feel the same to you, right? Because it's less new, and narcissists are constantly looking for that shiny new toy. And then, when you're in a relationship with somebody, they start being human, they show their imperfections, and narcissists have a very hard time with anyone's imperfections. They can't stand their own, they can't stand them in anyone else. So, as soon as you have show that you're human, they start to devalue you in general, right? But that's really a reflection of how they feel about themselves. They don't accept their own humanity, right? So a lot of narcissists are also sex and porn addicts because it's a way to get validation. So they can, if they're sleeping with multiple different people at the same time, they're getting all this validation. It's just a way to get validation. So you do see a lot of comorbidity. Also, I say with narcissists, in general, they have a really low level or no empathy. But you also see empathy impairments in people that are strictly sex and porn addicts, or alcoholics or drug addicts. Like every one of those disorders, you have an impairment of your empathy. But I think the difference is once you get clean and sober, do you still have those highly narcissistic traits? Like, do you get clean and sober from drugs and alcohol, but you're still engaging in your sex addiction? But again, that's not a very clear difference. I would say some differences, maybe some ways to tell the difference would be if somebody is confronted with the facts of their sex or porn addiction, are they willing to seek help? If they are presented with the facts, will they go to therapy? Will they go to 12-step recovery? Will they read some books on it? Or if they're confronted with the facts of their misconduct, do they keep lying? So there was a story, one of the clients I was talking to was talking about how even though she had photos of her husband having an affair from a private eye, she showed him to her husband, he continued to lie and deny it. Now that I think is more narcissistic, because even when you're confronted with the truth, you still are sticking to your lie. Or you might tell the truth in the moment and then 2 days later you start lying again. Like a narcissist will say, maybe admit to the affair. 2 days later, they start saying, oh no, it was just an emotional affair. Wait, you said it was an affair 2 days ago. You said that even in front of the therapist, but now you're saying it was an emotional affair. So like they'll start lying again, or they'll continue to lie. Not that addicts don't lie, because they do too. But I think it's one of those things, it's probably shades of gray. I think it's really hard to tell the difference. I think there's a lot of comorbidity. But in general, somebody who's an addict, often once they're confronted with the truth, or if they're about to lose their job or lose their wife or lose their relationship, are they willing to get some help for it and take some personal responsibility? Or do they do this? This is what narcs usually do. If they're confronted with the truth of their porn or sex, their secret sex life, or if they're about to lose their relationship, what they'll typically do is they will just discard that relationship and move on to a next one. Or what they'll do is, you'll see this a lot, if their spouse is getting close to the truth, then they will quickly secure another source of supply. And usually, almost always, there's overlap with narcs, right? So before they discard one source of supply, they've already been working on another one for a really long time. Another thing that you'll see with narcs that you don't usually see with just strictly sex addicts and porn addicts, you'll see this very often, is it's almost like they have multiple personalities. And really, if you're dealing with a covert, you could be dealing with somebody that's the same way for a really long time, and they appear to be so stable, so consistent, so reliable. And then when the discard happens, you literally see a mask fall off and an entirely different person emerges that you don't recognize, that you have never met, and you've been with them for 10, 15, 20 years. That multiple personality sort of thing going on there, that is way more narcissistic and way less addict. Addicts in general, they still have the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. They still are like a shit show, but usually they're like, they're a shit show this weekend and then they're okay for a week, or they're a jerk now this day, but then they're back to their normal selves. So they're sort of their sort of personality changes are much more dynamic. They're much more obvious. It's not like, wait, you were with somebody who appeared to be perfect for 10 years and then all of a sudden a mask comes off and you literally don't recognize the person that you're dealing with, and they have the completely opposing values to the ones that they profess to have when you were together. It's a really weird thing. It's almost like you're seriously dealing with somebody that has a split personality or multiple personalities. The reason for that is usually because that narc is started to secure their new source of supply, and they mirror other people, right? They mirror their new source, so they start taking on that person's personality. You do not see that as much with addicts. I mean, addicts typically, they, like I said, they may have the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing going on, but in general, they're kind of themselves. They can be themselves that's a jerk, and then themselves that's nice, but they're not like they don't mirror other people. They don't literally like morph into somebody else's personality. It's pretty unusual to see that really extreme dichotomy like you will with narcissists. Again, none of this is black and white. I think there is a great deal of comorbidity. Really, there's no way to truly determine without getting a completely professional and clinical diagnosis. I think people would have to go in and get treatment for their sex and porn addiction, get some remission from that, get some healing from that, and then see what's left. Because you might find if you go into remission for your porn and sex addiction and you start treating it and you start going to 12-step recovery and you start doing the spiritual work and the inner work and all of the therapeutic work, that person might find that they're not that selfish, that they're actually, their heart may crack open and they may find that they love helping others and that they're very giving and they're very kind. They may actually find that. I've seen that. Other times, I think, what you'll see is, with a narcissist, you'll probably see they get some remission for that and then they emerge and they're still very narky. But again, if they're willing to do any sort of work like that, 12-step work, which requires introspection, self-reflection, taking responsibility for your actions, like if they're willing to do that, they can, I think, get a lot, I think that even narcs can probably get some healing, because again, if it's addiction to feeling special, why can't you get healing for that just like you would for gambling or porn or sex or alcohol or drugs? I do know that part of the structure of the personality is that they believe that they are perfect and they cannot accept that or acknowledge that there's anything wrong with them. That makes it really hard for them to seek therapy. So I think one big differentiation you may also see is that with narcissists, they just don't go to therapy. They don't go to 12-step recovery. They don't go to treatment for sex and porn addiction. They don't go. They won't admit it. They keep denying it. So that is something I think you'll see a lot. So unfortunately, with the narcissist, it's this unwillingness to admit that there's anything wrong with it. And maybe because internally they don't think there's anything wrong with that. They don't think there's anything wrong with cheating, lying, gaslighting. A lot of times addicts will feel really shitty for their behaviors. They'll feel bad for what they do to other people, even if they're not clean and sober or, in remission from their sex and porn addiction. They'll feel bad, and they're usually going to have some attempts of where they've tried to stop and where they've tried to go online and join some of these no-fap groups or whatever, these sex addiction recovery groups. You'll see them make some attempts to stop the behavior. With narcissists, I don't know if they ever even make an attempt to stop the behavior, because I think that they really internally don't think there's anything wrong with it. The only problem they have is they have a problem with getting caught, right? So, unfortunately, I think, again, it's really hard to tell. I think it requires some really serious clinical intervention and some therapeutic work. And in order to get that, you've got to be able to acknowledge that there's something wrong with the pattern, with the way you've been living, with the way that you've been treating people, and the way you've been going about your life.